Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Angela Russell. I'm the CEO of the American Chamber of Commerce, and today it is our absolute pleasure to welcome you to the book launch, Brenda Kali's book launch, VERITAS, The Search for Conscious Leadership and Truth in a Fractured World. And I'm really just going to start off by reading two excerpts from the book. We live in extraordinary times, and nothing could be more abnormal as we lunge from one crisis to another, from COVID-19 to the devastating economic crisis. Even though the current radical times call for conscious ethical leadership, some still pursue a facade of grandiosity and ambition with little regard for the hungry and jobless. Brenda then goes on to say that there is a profound opportunity now to change the course of business by changing the shape, character, and consciousness of an organization with the quality of its leadership. I believe that conscious leaders shape conscious companies when they come to realize that their legacy is commensurate with a holistic vision. When a leader acknowledges his limitations with the power, profit, and position matrix that holds sway, he can then register a vision to activate an inner core of sensitivity, care, compassion, temperance, and tolerance, especially when the hurdles are daunting. And I think with COVID-19, we tend to be in a position at the moment where that holds very, very true. So for those who are friends of Brenda, and for those of you that maybe don't know Brenda, Brenda is one of the leading voices in advocating conscious and ethical leadership. Brenda is the founder and CEO of Conscious Companies, and their ethos is to create a socio-economic and political environment galvanized as an authentic expression of ethics and consciousness. Brenda believes that a conscious company is a beacon of conscious and ethical leadership where all of us as stakeholders feel valued and served, and its employees are driven to act in the best interests of the company. The Conscious Leadership Academy and essential part of the creation of the Conscious Leadership MBA, and these are all Brenda's babies. So Brenda has written her first book, Beyond the Corporate Sludge, which gave readers insights to create balance and harmony in the workplace. And VERITAS, The Search for Conscious Leadership and Truth in a Fractured World, is born out of Brenda's deep desire to comprehend ethics, consciousness, and leadership. And I suppose the question is, how do we create this brand of conscious leadership in a world where the need, grief, and self-interest run rampant? So we're going to show you a short video clip, and then I'm going to hand over to Brenda to discuss her brilliant book. Okay. So we can't seem to get that to work. Brenda, I think let's go back to you, and I suppose let's talk about your book on, how do we create this brand of conscious leadership in this world where need, grief, and self-interest run rampant. And we'll try and get this video back on at the end. So let me hand over to Brenda Kali.
Thank you, Angela. Good morning, all. Thank you for being here. At the outset, I would like to apologize for the postponement on the 3rd of September. The universe had other plans for me, but I'm here to tell the tale. Lockdown has created so much noise that I'm sure you're all webinared out, so I will be brief, say about half an hour. It was the late poet Hunter Thompson who had said that when the going gets tough, the tough gets weird. This certainly rings true for me, and at the best of times, there are already those who think that I'm a bit weird. But this has been weird on steroids. As I tried to translate the conversion of a black tie gala dinner of the Conscious Companies Awards into a virtual broadcast, while simultaneously trying to get the book published. So it was quite a marathon, and I'm sure there are many of you who have had those weird moments during our very confused lockdown. I guess my foray into consciousness was born out of tragedy. As I sat beside my 21-year-old daughter for over 10 months, I could not understand where she was despite being physically present. Where was her essence? Where had she gone to? She was physically breathing, but she was not present. This turned my life on its head and set me on an exploration of life, death, consciousness, while I simultaneously navigated a manipulative corporate environment. I had to come to terms with a new way of being, with a daughter in a wheelchair after a 10-month coma. Not my multi-million rand budget, nor my positional power, nor my executive skill set could prepare me for the distress that life was about to shovel my way. You know, this is not an unusual story. We all have stories to tell, be it the loss of a loved one, the loss of wealth, health, or the loss of livelihoods. And regardless of who you are, we are all forced at some point in our lives to confront some aspect that would shift us or transform us. Currently, the transformative agent is an invisible microbe in the blood that has us reeling globally from the loss, devastation, death, and deprivation of human contact. We have an opportunity here to allow the current situation to send us spiraling into an abyss, or to trigger us into another way of being, and to embrace an alternate reality of purpose and of meaning of life. You know, there is a line in my book that says, at some point in our lives, many of us have those defining moments where we are called upon to choose the hero's journey, face the demons, travel through darkness, and find a less brutal, less corrupt, and more gentle world. I guess the search for consciousness and truth started at the bedside of my daughter and morphed into the search for conscious ethical leadership after exposure to the unscrupulous and toxic leadership behavior during my time in the corporate space. Now, what differentiates a conscious leader, for that matter, any human being, from one who is unethical and unconscious? Why do we find ourselves in this dismal state presently in this country, where its leaders, in the throes of lockdown and economic crisis, loot the billions intended for the jobless and the hungry? What differentiates a doctor who cuts his patient and a murderer who cuts his victim, or the actions of a Zuma from that of a Mandela? My take is that the murderer wants to take a life and the doctor wants to save a life. The actions of a Zuma was exclusive, while the actions of a Mandela was inclusive, to create, reconcile, and build a rainbow nation. What is the difference here? It is the level of their consciousness and their understanding of responsibility. You know, leaders have great power, but they have to understand the responsibility of their power. Sadhguru, my favorite Indian mystic, says that responsibility is the ability to respond. I say the ability on how we respond to any given situation is dependent on the care, compassion, and kindness that is embedded in each one of us on how we treat another human being. You know, an incident during lockdown that had really triggered me and had an impact was the rape of the 2-year-old child in a hospital in Pretoria. This got me thinking of the bestiality that human beings are capable of. And as much as we are capable of such atrocities, on the other side of the spectrum, there are a breed of men and women whose inspired efforts have made a significant difference, especially in responding to the urgent need of the desperate in our society. You know, during this pandemic, and whenever there was a need, they opened their hearts to see that children do not go hungry or cold, and highly aware of the little things that they can do to make this planet a better place for someone else. They are the warriors for the underdog, the underprivileged, the homeless, the hungry, and the diseased. You can feel their care and compassion and their understanding of responsibility. They may not be perfect, but they have demonstrated their passion, purpose, and consciousness in their very actions. Some of them have walked this journey of awakening with me to advance the cause of ethical, conscious leadership. This was the catalyst for my writing this book, and some of their voices formed the narrative of VERITAS. It was Cheryl Carolus who told me that while it is necessary and important to identify what is going wrong and to fight it, it is more important to positively and proactively set the framework for what is going right. The actions and behavior of the leaders featured here in the book are what is going right in business at the moment. This is why conscious companies exist and why the book was born. It was to pay tribute to the very men and women featured here. There are many, many things that are going wrong globally, as well as in this country. The unconscionable killing of women and children in the gender-based violence culture of our patriarchy, the grasping and the grafting of many of our politicians, the cowardice and dismal lapses of those who vow to serve and protect us, the paralytic promises of our government, as well as the lack of ethics screams at us from daily headlines from some of the companies, and the protests of our dissatisfied masses that threaten to eradicate that which is good, noble, and conscious men who save the day from the hot mess that we are in. I could not, in fairness, include every leader whom I had interacted with or thought was conscious, and there are many who formed the Council of Conscious Leadership. But in every one of them that I had spoken to, I found that they had had a transformative experience in their lives. This had altered their internal dialogue and created a shift in their consciousness. As I said, they may not be perfect in everything they do. No one is, as we are all flawed, even me. But they have an essential understanding of values, ethics, consciousness, and to effect meaningful change. I asked them 2 questions. What was their moment of expanded consciousness? And what was their take on conscious leadership? Some of the leaders I'd spoken to had some fascinating insights on conscious leadership. They include, and I'm going to name some of them, include Merrick Abel, Adam Craker, Mark Lubner, Cheryl Carolus, Bonang Mahali, Luke Oliver Markey, Pepe Murray, the South Korean ambassador, John Day Park, Monica Singer, Abigail Kulusi, Herman Mashaba. I had also asked Professor Mervyn King and Michael Juden about the contrast of governance, ethics, and consciousness. Of the global icons, I asked Neil Donald Walsh, him of the Conversations with God, and Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, as well as Deepak Chopra. To them, I asked 2 questions. What is truth? And what is consciousness? All their voices, both local and global, collectively lend a diverse perspective of views on conscious leadership and truth. So why is it critical that those in leadership positions engage with and embrace not only consciousness and ethics, but understand the impact of conscious leadership on their companies and the bottom line? Let me clarify what I'm trying to say. A few years back, the chairman of Valdez Excon lost his job and knocked off billions of dollars of market cap for a small pawpaw. All he did was shrug his shoulders on television over 100,000-ton oil spillage in the pristine North Atlantic Ocean. What he said was, it just killed a few birds. What he didn't reckon on was the environmental lobby. A few years back, the same with BP's Gulf of Mexico oil spill. They did not reckon on social media when the CEO, Tony Hayward, made some communication gaffe, such as all he wanted to do was get back to his life, and calling the worst oil spill in the history of the US as a tiny trickle. BP's stock fell by a massive 52% as a result of the crisis, despite the fact that they had spent $40 billion to cover the cost of the cleanup and compensate fishermen who lost their livelihoods. It would be an interesting study to see how the leaders handled the devastation caused by the oil spill off the coast of Mauritius. There are any number of examples of leaders who are clueless about how Being a conscious leader affects the reputation, the brand, and the bottom line of their companies. We live in a technocentric world where the buzzwords are Zoom, Teams, Instagram, and YouTube. This is the new reality. A company does not have one spokesperson. They have millions. So your millions of spokespeople will wear your brand, shape their identity around your brand, or they will slander and destroy your brand. Millions of spokespeople will tell millions of your consumers whether to trust your company or not, and whether you are a conscious leader or not. You cannot fake credibility, integrity, or trust. Your organization hinges on the principles of trust, consistency, transparency, and authenticity. People buy into a product, a service, a brand, an idea, a relationship, simply because they trust that you're a conscious leader and will shape the company accordingly and just do the right thing. So just by example, a few years ago, when Apple had product innovation slip-ups, it became a media and reputation issue. So Tim Cook made 3 important decisions to handle the fallout. He announced that Apple would first make its charitable donation something Steve Jobs was reported to feel as just a waste of time. Then he engaged with labor organizations to implement a new working regime, placing their people first. And third, he announced that Apple would start paying dividends 17 years after it had stopped. The rest is history in the Apple story. I can cite 100 stories of how conscious leaders save their companies, not always looking at the bottom line, but by putting people first. They instill a culture of belongingness that makes all the difference. But the challenge for me, and especially for most of the leaders, is to get those leaders who are driven by just profit in the bottom line to think differently. This is the motivation behind VERITAS. It is possible. If they are exposed to the many voices in the book, all they need is not an academic understanding of what conscious behavior is about, but a willingness and awakening of the mind to explore the dormant forces of nature within them. This process of self-discovery would unfold a deep understanding that in turn would influence executive wisdom, self-awareness, perception, the power dynamic, ethics, and trust to create an inspirational life. I'm deeply aware of the many tragic riddles and the many pressures that define our 21st century lives. So much so that I'm going to leave you with some questions that might intrigue you enough to read the book. These are: how do we create this brand of conscious leadership in a world where need, greed, and self-interest runs rampant? How do we create visionary leaders whose actions manifest greater good for all? How can you change the value system of someone who has been forged in such severe deprivation? How can we transform someone from a self-interested materialist to a value-based human being of service to the collective? How can we turn the actions and behavior of a Zoomer into the actions and behavior of a Mandela, whose own personal needs were secondary to the overall well-being of the collective? How do we create a caliber of conscious, ethical leadership that can shift a country or company from this moral morass and global chaos we find ourselves in? How do we raise the bar to create conscious, courageous leaders with a different quality of thinking and being, with the capacity to uplift and influence those whose lives they touch? Hopefully, VERITAS will provide some of the answers, but not all. To unravel these questions, it is imperative that we look within at who we are. Unhelped by our educational system, it requires an internal journey and an attitudinal change. The reflection of leadership and how to create a better world for all who live in it requires courage and to embark on a journey of individual transformation, also requires courage, because individual transformation is possible, without which corporate transformation, political and social transformation is not possible. This is an individual journey of every leader and every human being. We as leaders, as a species, as humanity, must adequately understand the transformative power of consciousness, the ability to move into a portal of awareness, and our latent propensity for good. There is a price to pay for all this, though. If you embark on a journey of conscious leadership, ethics, and the understanding of consciousness, you will never be the same again. If you're forced by circumstances to do something that is unethical, your conscience will raise its head, and you will willingly or unwillingly think of the actions you had taken or about to take. It will not sit well within your core being. That is the price of this journey of consciousness. If we are to learn about a whole new way of being, we must do so in the knowledge that it would not always be easy. This journey for me has thus far been far from easy, but the deep satisfaction of a leader that gets it is priceless and makes it all worthwhile. I'm hoping that VERITAS will open up new vistas of understanding, especially for the leadership of this country. We so need it. And for those who have been exposed to conscious leadership or been unexposed to conscious leadership. Thank you all. Thank you, Angela. And thank you all for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Brenda. And you know, as you said, the catalyst is something that puts everyone on this path of consciousness. And I think, you know, what I've become very aware of, especially in the corporate environment, is that awareness and ego cannot coexist, which is something that you have mentioned in your book. And you can see that the necessity of letting go of ego is so critical. And I think in your book you quote Shosha Ravi Shankar to say enlightenment is going from being someone to becoming nobody, and from nobody to becoming part of everyone. And I think that is just such a profound way of describing consciousness. So thank you very much for giving this book to us as a gift for us to read. For those who are interested in the book, Brenda has it available at her Conscious Companies, as well as the exclusive bookstore. So, you know, please, you know, go ahead and look for your copy there. I think maybe, Brenda, if we maybe open up to the audience to see if there are any questions or any comments from anyone. Anyone like to raise their hand or just, you know, ask Brenda any questions? What is that, Brenda, you see?
I see Prof. King. I see many others who I've been interacting with, and some of them are in the book.
Right, so if we go to some of the chats, I don't know, Annika, if you can maybe read any of the chats out for us.
So we have from Vickers saying, congrats, Brenda, on the launch of VERITAS. And then from Andrea Gerling, congrats on the book, Brenda. And then also from Monica, well done, Brenda. Looking forward to reading the book.
Okay, so I see a hand raised. I can't see who that hand is from. So if you would like to go ahead,
Charmaine.
please.
Charmaine Hervé.
Ah, great. Thank you, Charmaine.
Hi, Brenda. Hello. Hi, Professor Judge Mervyn King. It's so lovely to see you all on the call today. And I know, Brenda, we former colleagues, and I know your passion has always been around intention, especially from corporates and even with your whole conscious companies movement that I know, you know, Judge King was very instrumental in as well, just in terms of the thought process. I know there's many other books that you've also authored just around driving and encouraging consciousness in organizations. And, you know, congratulations to AmCham for actually stepping up and assisting, I think, with the VERITAS launch of the book. And I'm just, you know, wondering, in terms of immediate type of interventions and support that you see anyone on this platform or group can actually give to you to ensure that these types of interventions are taken a bit more seriously, especially now during this time. What do you think that is, Brenda?
I think the place we find ourselves in with the looting and the corruption from government officials, especially the leadership of government, do not get what consciousness is or what conscious leadership is. It's all about self-interest and just being open to opportunity to loot. So this is a very powerful bunch of leadership right here gathered around this table, should I say. And I think we should make a concerted effort to engage with government, especially with cabinet, to say there is another way of doing business. There is another way of operating, rather than, put South Africa first. We had those days. We had when Mandela was here. We had that time together. We had a wonderful space where the collective came together, where South Africa came together. And we find ourselves in a very dark place. When the solidarity funds are looted, funds that are meant for the hungry and the homeless, how on earth do we justify that? How on earth do we justify the actions of accountability when no one has gone to jail, even though they have been accused and there's blatant records out? So I think the priority is to engage. Angela?
Thank you, Brenda. So I don't know, we've had one or two more comments. Are there any other hands for comments, questions, congratulations for Brenda?
Anyone want to know what consciousness is about? Anyone doesn't understand consciousness?
We have a hand raised here by Manasa. Apologies if I've pronounced your name incorrectly, but please go ahead, Manasa.
I can't hear you.
Manasa?
Hi, Brenda.
Hello.
Can you hear me now? Hi. I just wanted to say congratulations on yet another book published. And thank you for raising the consciousness of millions of people over the past 40 or 50 decades. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to reading your book.
I don't know if it was millions, it's just a trickle. I don't think it was millions.
I think it's millions. Congratulations.
Yeah, and a trickle starts a waterfall, Brenda. So, we all need to start somewhere. So, absolutely. And I think, there's comments there to say absolutely agree. The priority is to engage. So, again, it's part of discussions on how do we move this agenda forward, I think are very critical for us. Do we have any other questions then for Brenda at this time?
Hi, Brenda. It's Peter here.
Peter.
It's so nice to see the launch eventually happening. And thank you for all your input and your understanding. As you know, we're had something involved here, and Carla's here with me. And we're very happy that it's out. People can read about it. People can understand what it's all about. It's a very important contribution to South Africa, to the commerce, to the businessmen, to people who are genuinely interested in where South Africa is going at the moment, because we're in a very deep hole and we've got to see ourselves clear for the next 20 to 30 years. At least your book will point people, some people, in the right direction so they can reassess the whole approach to living in South Africa.
Thanks,
Okay.
John. Thank you. I just wanted to say Peter and Carla edited the book, so yeah, gave his 2 cents worth.
Thank you.
Let me just make sure my mic is on. Yes, it is.
Working now, Angela.
Yes, we'll play the video for you now. I just wanted to just give you a few here. You have messages from Hirsch's. Just saying congratulations from everyone at Hirsch's. Anita's saying agree the priority is to engage Brenda, remarkable efforts and dedication to this work. I look forward to engaging with you and exploring collaborative opportunities on how we can bring the leaders of this country in powerful, impactful ways. Business Engage has said, so wonderful to be on this journey with you, Brenda. Congratulations on this achievement, and it's a privilege to know you. You're very special. And I am from Charmaine. Love Brenda's passion and her commitment to continue driving consciousness and engagement, much needed, more so during these complex times. One from Andrew Gerling to say congrats to Peter for editing the books. And then there are a couple of thanks and people looking forward to reading this book. So absolutely, we're encouraging you to go out, buy the book. It is, for me, it was a brilliant read, an easy read. It was very insightful, and a lot of the stories or personal stories were very similar to all of those who have started a conscious journey. So Annika, let's see if we can now get this technology to work and show this video before we let everyone off.
Thank you all for supporting.
All right, please bear with me for a few seconds. Let's try this one more time.
I started my career as a writer. I saw the world that we were all familiar with. It was all about ambition and what it sold as success. But it was a world by injustice, greed, extreme wealth and isolation, yet turning a blind eye to those in need. Externally, it was about work and career, juggling 2 young children. Internally, I was driven by something else, knowing that there was something more. So I went searching for the truth.
Neil, we all have our own versions of truth. What, according to you, is truth? What is truth according to Sri Sri Ravi Shankar?
We have modern capacities and Bronze Age mentality. This is devastating. If we don't correct this, I think the human species will be a failed experiment.
The reason that I am so insistent on holding to this idea is because I see that the other idea, that there is such a thing as absolute truth, is what has created enormous pain in people's lives and in the life of the world.
We are the only beings, I believe, on our planet anyway, that are conscious of our consciousness. And with that comes this quest to find the truth, as you call it.
An awareness of that sort is created in a person. When that consciousness breaks, I have to do something for the people. I have to do some service in the society, or I have to know deeper truths about life before I die.
There is only one way to discover the truth. You have to go in search of it.
VERITAS. Available online and at all leading bookstores.
I started my career.
Excellent, Brenda. Thank you so much for the gift that you have given to us to read so that we can all continue on our journey towards conscious leadership. And I think, as Deepak said there, we need to be conscious of consciousness. So that is our quest as we go forward. I think, Manasa, I think you had something else that you wanted to add?
I just wanted to say congratulations, and we feel very privileged to know you, and we feel very blessed that you are guiding us into a higher consciousness.
Excellent. So please go and buy your copies. As we said, they are available online through Conscious Companies or through exclusive books. Brenda, I'm going to give the last word to you before we close out.
So just to add to that, all the participants whom I interviewed, they don't have to go and buy it. They have a special copy delivered to them. They will have a special copy delivered to them. The 12 leaders, and Prof. King and Michael Jordan, they all have their copies. So just as a last thought, people try and define several ways of what consciousness is about. And I would say consciousness is a lived experience. It is subjective. How can you explain something that is inexplicable? And that is what consciousness is. You will know it. It's like being in love. You cannot explain being in love, but you can experience it. So too is consciousness. You cannot experience someone who is conscious, but you can experience their actions, and they can experience who they are themselves. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Brenda. And we wish you all of the best success with your book. Thank you for sharing with us today, and thank you to all of the guests who have joined us for Brenda's book launch. So thank you very much.
Angela,
be well.
Thank you very much for providing this. Bye.
It's our pleasure. Thanks. Bye-bye.